Hello, YouTube. Welcome back for another episode of the Easy Lidar homing script tutorials. Today, we are going to talk about all the custom data configuration and missile deployment commands. Now, I'm going to try to keep this short while explaining everything as it can be a little bit confusing. Now, up first is the custom data configuration. And all this variable lists can be found under the custom data configuration section of the walkthrough guide here on Steam Workshop. Now, I'm not going to talk about all of these because, as you can see, there is a lot here. I am going to talk about a couple that I find important. Um, you can go through the list and change as you see fit. Now, before I go through these, they can be changed and edited in two ways. On your programmable block of the missile, which in this case is right here, under the programmable block of your missile, you got 2 points. You can either A, go into your custom data and just copy and paste everything right in there, or you can dig into the script itself and you can just find what you're looking for and change it as you see fit. Now, the one that I pulled up first is these. Number one is the vertical takeoff, and it is vertical takeoff equals true or false. What this does is this basically uses your counter thrust for the missile to fly away from your ship before it flies forward. So on this one, this is your counter thrust right here. So the missile would actually attempt to fly that way for, I don't know, maybe to here, half a second to a second before your forward thruster kicks in. Now the problem with this specific missile setup is the connector, your emerge block here. If the missile tries to fly that way, it's going to fly into your ship. Now, on a planet, it's it doesn't matter because your gravity should pull the missile down and away from the ship as it starts to take off anyways. Now, if I wanted to, I could flip this thruster around to point the other direction and it would actually perform a vertical takeoff. So it would fly down and then forward. The problem with that is if you're close to the ground, when you launch it, the missile is going to impact the ground. Now, it will turn itself to where the thrust faces down against the gravity, but depending on how many gyroscopes you have on a missile, it doesn't do it instantly. So if you want to do it that way, you're going to need some clearance before launching. Next is exclude friendly. Now I know I've talked about this before in the first episode. When you're testing your missile, you leave this on false. That way you can target whatever you like while you're testing it. However, if you're going to go into a fight, you want to set this to true because you don't want the missile coming back and hitting you. Remember, you ever seen what's the movie called with the submarines? The Hunt for Red October. At the end, whenever the Russians like, "You arrogant fool, you killed us," they killed themselves with their own torpedo. That kind of thing. Offset targeting. I believe I mentioned that before. Basically, your missile will impact where you initially locked onto it. If it's set to true. If it's set to false, it'll try to hit the center of the grid every time. Not necessarily a bad thing, but if you want to target specific points like engine pods, weapons, or even if the ship already has a big hole in it, or it's built like a ring or something, the missile's going to try to target the center of the grid, which is where the hole already is. Naturally, there's nothing there, so it's just going to fly right through it and do nothing. So it may be a good idea to set that to true. I usually do. Launch seconds. Launch seconds is the number of seconds the missile flies forward before it starts to track. Now, what this is good for is, say, a missile tube, or if your missile is set further back on your ship where it has to fly over the top, you don't want it to steer into the ship and impact into the side. Now, as a missile tube, let's say this line of text is the top of your ship or your base, and right here between the E and the L is your launch tube. If you leave this alone and don't set this missile is going to try to come up the launch tube and it's going to try to track pretty much instantly. And if it does that, it's going to bind up inside your missile tube. It's going to come up and hit the side. And then you invite Lord Clang. So if you need a certain amount of time for your missile to clear the tube, and it depends on the size of the missile, the size of the tube, how long it takes to accelerate, depends on how long you may want to set the timer for. It's just testing. So you can set this for 5 seconds, and the missile will come way up, and then it'll start to track and come and impact your target. Now, even if you don't have a launch tube, what that may be good for is, once again, if you're on a base, if you don't want this missile to come out and then follow along the ground and risk hitting a tree or smacking into a small hump in the ground, you may want this to fly up and then come down from like a top-down approach. That's another thing you can use it for. Next is this lock distance. What this does is this sets the maximum distance your missile can automatically lock and track a target. By default, it's set for 3,000, which is 3 kilometers. The reason it's set this way is the cameras, the way they work in Space Engineers, is you have a set tick, like a tick down timer. Every so many seconds has every so many ticks where it'll track a target. I can't remember how many ticks per second or how many seconds per tick, but if you set it past the 3 kilometers, it's going to take longer for it to lock. You'll have a less accurate lock, and you risk it losing its lock and missing. The way around that is more cameras. So if you put more cameras on the front of your missile, you have more ticks to use, and you can increase this distance. Theoretically, you can go as far as you want. You could set it for 10 kilometers if you can see that far, and you can hit a ship 10 kilometers out. Next, which I did not include it in here, let's go over to the script here. Oh, I gotta find it here. Where is it at? Okay. These right here, reference block names. As you see, Lidar, forward, your text panel, your turrets. This is the name of the blocks. And if you remember back to the previous tutorials, the cameras are R_Lidar, you got R_forward for a turret, R_designator for a turret, and R_target for the LCD screen where you put your GPS coordinates on. You do not have to change these, but if you want to get a little complex, you can physically set your own name for your blocks. So if you don't want your targeting cameras named R_Lidar, you come right in here and change it. Or you can put this in custom data. I find this relatively useless except for 2 things. R forward and R designator. Now, if we go back to the turrets on the top and a Jeep and using the turret modes. Now, if you remember, mode 3 was kind of like a TV guide, and the other one was mode 5, where the AI turret automatically locks on and guides a missile to a target. If you want to use both of these modes, mode 3 and mode 5, on the same ship, let's say this tiny ship right here, I would need 2 cameras. I would need one and then maybe another one. And I have to call one R forward, one R designator, right? R designator, R forward. What if I don't want that? What if I only want a single turret on my ship? Ooh, little lag spike here. What was that? Oh, game saved. Okay. What if I only want a single turret on my ship? whatever reason, whatever the design I'm going for, I can come in here and I can change these. I can change this to say simply turret, and I can change the other one to simply turret or whatever. And then the turret on my ship, I would name this turret. And that way, both of these modes, modes 3 and mode 5, would follow the same turret, this one. And voila, there you go. Now that's it for the first section here of custom data configuration. And really, like I said, there's a bunch of things you can come down. You can just read through these and set them to as you want. You can change it. You can get very complex, get very simple. It really doesn't matter. Up next, we are going to go into missile deployment commands. Now, the missile deployment commands can be a little confusing to look at, and that's what this here is. This is for a weapon that I've designed. I'll leave it over here. Nope, hang on. It's this thing. It's a cluster bomb. Now, to understand what all this is, I'm going to demonstrate it to you real quick. Now let's come up here. Real quick. Thought I had a ship floating around up here, maybe not. Alright. Let's paste this in real quick. Tick tock, tick tock, tick tock. Okay. I hope I don't blow up my own base down there. So here's what's going to happen. Whenever I activate this little bomb, this uses the Easy Lidar homing script just without thrusters, and it's just on the mode 6, which is your standard glide mode, like standard rockets. Technically, it would fly straight if I had thrusters on it. That's not what I intended it to do. What's going to happen is this is going to come off the wing, and in 8 seconds, the parachute is going to open, pulling it from horizontal to vertical. In 10 seconds, the gyroscopes are going to kick in and it's going to start to spin the missile. And at certain RPMs, these little cluster things are going to detach and, well, fall down and go boom. And I set it at various RPMs simply because I didn't want one big circle. I wanted to kind of like small and bigger, increase the coverage area, if you will. So that's what happens. And when I get back down to the text, I'll show you what I'm talking about. Now here, let's go ahead and run this. Run. Now it's going to free fall. Boom, parachute. 2, 3, 4, 5. And as you see, it'll going to kind of be spread out a little bit. Bam, 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 bam. And there we have it. Yeah, where did that go? All right, so how does this work? Now, this text here, missile activation commands, can be 2 places. It's the same as the other one. It can be either in the custom data, or you can come into the script and come down to where you see it, missile activation commands equals, and then you got your quotation marks. All this has to be inside the quotation marks. Just like this, missile activation commands equals, quotation marks, yada, 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 yada. And each one of these commands are separated by a comma. See, comma, next one. Comma, next one, and so on. Now let's look at the guide here real quick. Okay. Now, missile deployment commands only take place after the launch phase, and it's in the homing phase. Launch phase is the launch seconds. That's the launch phase. After that time period, if you change it, it'll kick in. Now, usage. Now, if you look in the missile deployment commands and in the guide, Act X, or X right here is one of these. And then block main, colon, and your action. So, B is triggers an action for all blocks with a specific name, starting with a specific name, ending with a name, or containing a name. Some of the examples are Act B, Warhead, Start Countdown. So, B with a specific name, right? So, any blocks on your missile with the specifically named warhead, not Warhead 1, not Warhead 2, not Warhead 3, specifically just Warhead. Start countdown. We all know what the countdown is. Act P, thrusters on, off, on. So P is for all blocks starting with a specified name. So it could be thruster 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, thruster 50. They will all on, off, on. Now, where can you find these commands? I will throw this link in the, I don't want Google. I will throw these links in the description below. But if you go into the guides of space engineers, let me pull up my favorites here. Under the guide for the Masters Automatic LCDs 2, and this is an easy way you can find it in-game without alt-tabbing out. In their guide, where it says the prop bowl, which is new, this link right here, which says you find all the properties on the wiki, awesome by malware. These are all the blocks in the game with their commands. So the first one we looked at was warhead, right? my warhead. These are the commands. So decrease detonation time, detonate, which is detonate, increase detonation time, the safety, which is arm warhead on, off, on, show on HUD, start, stop countdown. These are the commands right here on the left side, and this is what it does on the right. Now back up to the top, let's find another one. How about beacon? Decrease radius, increase radius, on, off, toggle the block on or off, toggle block off, toggle block on, show on HUD, yada yada yada. Another one, how about something related to the missiles? Okay, parachute. I did the parachute one on that cluster bomb. Auto deploy, you can auto deploy on and off. You can toggle the parachute block on and off. You can toggle the block open or close to deploy the parachute. That's where all these commands can be found at. So let's go back to the other guide here. Tick, tick, tick. Okay, back under the missile deployment commands. So Act X, which X is whatever you want. The block name, which is not the type of block, that specific block name in your toolbar. So that's this name right here. Something went boom. That's this name right here. That's the block name, right? And then your block action is this here on the left. That's how you control the blocks. Now going down a little bit further. Set X, Y. So once again, blow up name, property value. So X can be the same thing as up here, right? Which is what shows you right here. It's just the name, whether it starts with, whether it contains it, whether it ends with it, or the specific name. And then down here is your properties. Set property value as a float, as a boolean, whatever. Sets distance to property value. That this is equals to. So let's find one. So let's go as a float. Set BP gyroscope 1 yaw 10. So it sets the yaw value of gyroscope 1 to 10, which is makes it spin or tip over and end on end depending on which way your gyroscope is oriented. Set BB remote show on HUD true. So basically your remote control will show up on your HUD. Set PP warhead detonation time to 5. So set detonation time to 5 for all blocks with a name started with warhead, right? P, all blocks with specified name. P, property value is a float. Detonation time, 5. So what this does is it doesn't start the countdown, it just sets the countdown timer to 5. You still have to start the countdown with another command. So it would be warhead, what would it be here? Let me look. Go back down to warhead. So you would do the same thing. So set PP warhead. Timer, where's the timer? Start countdown. So set PP warhead, start countdown. That's what it would be. And that's basically it. You got to mix and match and find what you want, what you want the block to do. And it just gets a little more complex. And these are just the properties. And the properties are, I'm trying to remember. It's the timers, like anything in your block where sliders can be changed. So pull up a warhead here. So under the warhead, the slider. This is what your properties change. Now, what else can it change with sliders? It can change your thrusters, your thrust override. It can change all the sliders in your wheels, if for whatever reason you have a missile with wheels on it. It can change your gyroscope, your overrides in your gyroscope. That's what the properties change. That's what this does. It changes your properties. Now the next one down is TGX. These are when your missile is doing something, it does something else. I guess that's the best way to put it. So, okay, let's do this. TGX. R is triggers the specified command when a missile is spinning at a specific RPMs. So my cluster bombs, when they release, spinning at a specific RPM. And when I get over to the screen, I'll show you that. D is triggers the specified command when a missile is within the distance specified by the trigger value. So when your missile is, say, trigger value is 100. When your missile is 100 meters from the target, it will arm the warheads. Triggers to specify command when a missile is within the distance specified by the trigger value from the bounding sphere of the target. I never used that. I couldn't tell you what it does, to be honest with you. E triggers to specify command when a missile has traveled the distance by the trigger value starting from the time this command is issued. So if you set this for 8 seconds and then the missile travels, say, 100 meters, after 8 seconds, it'll do something. Triggers the specified command X number of seconds later. Well, there you go. So, okay. Examples. TGR. R is your RPMs. TGR 25 ACTP lock on off. Execute the command lock on off when the missile is spinning more than 25 RPMs. DGD certain distance within a certain distance. Execute the command start countdown when the missile is within 2,000 meters to target. Right? TGD 2,000 meters to target. What is it going to do? Arm the warheads. Well, start the countdown timer. TGE 500 warhead start countdown. Execute the command ACB warhead start countdown when the missile has moved 500 meters since this command is issued. TGT 8 ACB warhead start countdown. Execute the command 5 seconds later. So how would I don't know how I would put this. Okay, so yeah, when this command is issued, the warhead, after 5 seconds, the warhead countdown starts. When this one is issued, after the missile has traveled 500 meters, the countdown starts. When it's within 2,000 meters, the countdown starts, and then this lock on off when the missile is spinning more than 25 RPMs. So what does all this mean? What can you do with all of that? Now, missile activation command, blah, 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 blah. This is all for my cluster bomb that I just showed you. And it's set in order. Well, sort of. All at once, within 10 seconds, like when the missile launches, in 10 seconds, the gyroscope is going to start pitching up. Or it's going to start to pitch, it's going to start to rolling. But 8 seconds, I have it set for the parachute to open. I have the warhead to arm immediately, and these are to release. So I don't have this in order as the way the commands are or the way the missile acts, so we'll just go through these one at a time. First, the warhead safety, true. The warhead's arm. As soon as I drop the bomb, the warhead's arm. So when they hit the ground, kaboom. At the same time this command is being activated, TGT 8 ACP parachute open _ on. So the parachute is going to open after 8 seconds, right? That's the timer. 8 seconds, parachute open. At the same time these two are being activated, this one is being activated. Same thing as this one. In 10 seconds, the gyroscopes pitch 60. So what that's saying is after the bombs fall for 10 seconds, they start to spin. And I had to use 60s because of the way the gyroscopes are oriented on my bomb. Basically, they are trying to spin the missile up to 60 RPMs. Now lastly, down here at the bottom, cluster release 2, 3, 4. What these are, remember, are is RPMs. At X number of RPMs, which is 30, which is 20, and which is 40, the cluster release on, off, off. When I built this bomb, the merge blocks, right, or I named them cluster releases. And I set them, I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but I only got 3 of them in the list. So these two are named 1, these two have another name, and the last one in the back have a third name. and they from from front to back. So number 3 is in the front. So after 20 RPMs, the first 2 release. Number 2 is in the middle. After 30 RPMs, they release and fall away. And then the very back one is number 4. So after 40 RPMs, it disconnects and falls away. So in a nutshell, what all this means is I drop my bomb. 8 seconds later, the parachute opens. 10 seconds later, they start to spin. And then, depending on how long it takes for them to spin, which, as you've seen, was very quick, the cluster bombs release. I could have did this on a timer if I wanted to, say 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds, but I did RPMs. It's just the way I chose to do it. Now, I don't know if I did a very good job explaining all this because it can be very confusing. I've had to really, really play around with it, but once you understand it, it's very simple. Now, at the top of the guide up here, it starts off easy. It's a simple whatever block you want, whatever you want your action to do. It's very, very, very simple. Block name, block action, and the X right here is however you want your naming to go, however you want it to be detected. You may do that because you may have, say, in my case, I got 3 sets of cluster releases. I wanted to be very, very specific with it so they all fall apart in a certain order. I don't want them all to release at once. So that's what the X comes into place. Down below, set XY is basically your block name, which is what your X is. Y is what kind of property you want it to do. And the property name, and then your property value. The property name could be your thrust override, it can be your warhead countdown time, it could be your gyroscope pitch roll, which in my case, the pitch. And then the property value, which 60 property value. And Y's can be all of these. Set your properties afloat, Boolean, estimated time to impact, blah, blah, blah. It can get a little confusing. Missile current speed divided by property value. See examples. It can get very confusing. I'm still understanding it, and it took me a while to really get the hang of it. So, gyroscope on, yaw, remote controlled on, off. Detonation time 1. So if is estimated to impact in 12 seconds, it will set the detonation time of warhead to 12. 12 divided by 1 equals 12. The 3, set BA. If detonation time of warhead is 12 seconds, it will change to 15 seconds. 12 plus 3 equals 15. Why is it that? Because it's basically adds the time. So if you don't want your missile to blow up on impact, you can set it to, say you want to try to penetrate like a kinetic warhead and then explode. It's what it does. So if it hits in 12 seconds, you add. It doesn't set it to your actual warhead time to 3. It adds 3 to your estimated impact time. So if we look at set BA, Y set A adds to the existing value of the block specific properties. TG, once again, those are kind of like values and trigger commands also, but you gotta look through it. So triggers to specify a command when a missile is within a certain distance from the bounding sphere. TGE 500 warhead time start countdown. When the warhead is moved since 500 meters since the command has been issued, it starts the countdown. And once again, I apologize if I didn't go through these very good. It's hard to explain hard to go through all these, hard to understand. These are very complex missiles. And my cluster bomb, it's not that complex. It's really not. But understanding how to make it work, I think I spent 5 hours on this alone. Just getting it getting it to launch, getting the parachute to open properly, getting it to spin up to speed, getting the cluster bombs to release in the right order. Um, it can be confusing. And just to give you an idea of what we're looking at here, we'll pull up this one. I believe I showcased this in, or kind of showed this off in one of my other videos earlier. This uses the Lidar homing script. And I'm not going to go dive into the commands on this one, but basically, the hydrogen stage, it uses GPS, the hydrogen stage launches it up into the atmosphere. And when I tested this out, it could reach the far side of the moon with 3 tanks of hydrogen. And whenever it reaches the first GPS point, somewhere up in space, wherever you put it, the second stage kicks in. It shuts off the thrust for the rear, turns on the ion thrusters, and it'll guide to a second point. So say this is outer space, a missile flying from that mountain over there to here. I am on the far side of the moon right now. Thrusters shut off, ions kick on, and this could actually steer backwards to the base on the moon. So it can come from Earth, GPS coordinates on the far side of the moon, spin around, and guide itself by GPS back to its target. And this one is has a penetrating warhead on it, if you will. All this black is 100% pure heavy armor, as you can see, all armor. And then the red is where the warheads are. So this will actually impact, penetrate into the base, and once it's right about the inside of the base, the warhead detonates. Just the way I have the timers and stuff set up. So I did all this using the missile deployment commands. So in a nutshell, I can launch this missile from the planet, and I can hit a moon base on the opposite side of the moon with this right here. It works. I've done it in testing. So it can get pretty complex. Pretty complex. See, like, yada, yada, yada. Down on this one down here. Missile trigger commands, ion. And it shuts the ions off because they're useless on the planet. It uses pure hydrogen. Starts the timers. So this one is whenever it's at 125 meters from its target, the timer triggers. And the timer I have built into this missile actually shuts off the hydrogen thrusters, and it basically tells this one to launch, and this becomes its own missile, while that becomes the launching ship. The ions automatically kick on by themselves, and the missile flies off to a target like it normally would. So you can build very, very, very complex toys with the missile deployment commands here in Space Engineers using a script. And you can do this vanilla. Like that missile where I can hit a target on the far side of the moon is 100% vanilla. This cluster bomb, it's a cluster bomb. I could have set it up with timers if I wanted to, but just the way I wanted to build the launching ship and whatnot, I decided to use the script. I could have had a timer open this. I could have had another timer turn on gyroscopes and have it start spinning. I could have had 3 more timers, 1, 2, 3, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, release the clusters. But I decided to do it with the script just because the way my build is set up. So playing around with this, it can be pretty interesting. Well, that's it. I hope I've given you some insight into the deployment commands. Like I said, it can be very confusing, and the best way to really learn how to use these is to use them. I mean, that's what space engineering is all about, right? Being an engineer, if you will. You know, you make a build, you test it, it doesn't work properly, you redesign it, you test it again, redesign it, test it again, and you just play around until you get exactly what you want. But all right, ladies and gentlemen, you have a good day. I hope I've inspired you to make missiles using vanilla, using scripts, and I hope I make your day a little easier using these scripts. It can be really fun to play around with, really interesting, um, and for this, maybe say multiplayer for servers where you don't have mods, or in your survival world on single player, you don't want to use a specific mod or a mod's broken, or you want something a little more complex than what the mods offer. That's what this script is for. But that'll be all, folks. You have a good day.